When chone bases aren't doing it for you anymore, it's time to show your fealty in Dune Awakening, and today we are doing just that by building a small but noble Atreides themed castle in a single advanced sub-fief. The requirements are on screen now. I did use a little bit of Caladan Palace in this build, but you can easily just use Atreides stronghold. As for location, I chose to build this base right here on the mid-south of the Haga Rift. So let's get into it. Starting off, I firstly did the foundation trick to raise the advanced sub-fief a bit higher, giving us enough room for the full height of the build, and I went 2 foundations from the base. From there, I built out the foundations as per the blueprint, aside from the wedge section in the back right and the greyed out segments, as I'll end up adding those a little later. Also, to save on some resources, the interior foundations in the centre are actually floor pieces instead, as they cost slightly less plastone each. At the front of the build, I placed down a double ramp into the doorway where I'll later place the pentashield. Now onto the walls, and we're keeping things relatively simple. Windows are placed semi-regularly across the first tile, and wall 2s are mixed in throughout, with plain walls on top for the second tile. This build will frankly end up looking horrid if we don't mix and match walls like these, so it is an essential part of the design, as are the windows, otherwise it will be quite dark and dense in here. I left an open passageway to the rear courtyard alongside a 2x2 for the pentashield and another 2x2 for an internal gate from the garage. For that internal gate from the garage, place a strip of half walls at the top and inverted roof covers underneath to smooth it into the design. In the staircase tower, it's a simple 180-degree staircase up to the first floor, and I'll cap off the ground floor walls with regular Atreides ceilings. On the first floor over the rear courtyard, build a 1x3 balcony with a rounded end and then continue to finish off the ceilings. For the walls on this floor, we're going to do a similar thing as the ground floor, intersperse windows regularly again, with plain walls between and wall 3s on the second tile. I also included some of my custom window designs in here, one on the southern side of the first floor and another over the garage, alongside a tall door on the western side to access the balcony. If you don't know how to make these custom windows, it's covered in this video linked in the card in the top right. Back over the staircase section, build up the walls and gables in the fashion shown here. This stepped roof design helps to keep the shape interesting, but also gives us enough headroom so it's not too cramped in this segment, and we'll cap it off with a roof a little later on. Over the garage, use roof covers to build a custom passageway as shown. Pretty simple, but it's much more interesting than a prefab passage. When the walls are complete, build a 90-degree staircase in the back left corner up to the second floor, and cover the top of the first floor walls with ceilings. Now on the second floor, use rounded window walls to transition from square to circular corners. You'll also need a rounded inward floor over the staircase to make this transition smooth. For the walls, we'll use wall 2s on the first tile and wall 3s on the second, with a single tile door out to the front and side balconies over the first floor and garage respectively. When the walls are complete, cap them off with the appropriate ceilings alongside a hatch frame and a ladder to access the roof. In the centre I placed 4 Caladan Palace ceilings, but you can swap these for Atreides rooftop pieces instead if you don't have the Caladan set. It doesn't make an enormous difference. Now onto the roofing and the tower tops. This is generally going to be nice and easy. Atop the flat roofs and the towers, you use railing gates to create castle style crenellations with rounded fences where necessary. Over the staircase segment, just place the regular roof pieces between the gables to close it up. Now for some extras and details. With the roofs complete, I headed to the rear courtyard to construct the gazebo. This is nice and easy. Simply build a ring of 6 wedges, place half walls around and build some floors atop it. Passageway at the front, windows on all of the sides, wedge roofs to finish it off with a half staircase connecting it to the courtyard. Next to the entrance, use an inverted roof cover to make a plinth next to the door, onto which you can then place an Atreides Solido. You don't have to do this, but I think it looks quite nice. On the ground floor, we'll also use roof covers and half walls to create arches in the ceilings. You can leave this as is, or you can customise it further, as I'll show you in a moment. Around the base of the staircase tower, I built a ramp structure to flow into the double ramp at the pentashield and blend this kind of ugly section of the build a bit better. This will generally depend on where you build this as to if you'll need it, but if you're on a slope like I am, this ends up looking a lot better than it was before. Back on the ground floor, if the arches aren't enough, you can also add roof pieces to the arches to create vaulted ceilings. Put them half a tile down and connect them to the floor above with half walls, else the top of the roofs will poke through the ceilings above. This is nice, though I don't think it will be for everyone, so it depends on your tastes. I also did the same in the courtyard outside to give the balcony above a bit more structure. Finally, back on the top floor, I replaced the middle tiles with the large windows. This floor was a little too dark without them, but it looks much better with them. Finally, this small Atreides castle was complete. I actually based this castle design on a design I found online. I wasn't able to get an actual source of where this image came from, but the design was quite nice, and I did try and Duneify it, for want of a better word, to make it fit the world a bit better. This is also my competition entry for the Build Your Dune building competition. It'll all be finished by the time you're watching this video. I do have quite a backlog of videos at the moment, but the idea was to build something to represent your faction, and I thought a castle did that fairly well for Atreides. Going through the build, I've not decorated too much as, well, I'll be frank, I've not actually unlocked all of the Atreides decorations yet. I'm still only faction level 3, so there's a few out of my reach for now. However, I did include the Chome overhead lighting to brighten up the build. I mentioned in some previous videos that the small lights are pretty dim, and whilst these overhead lights still aren't amazing, they do a lot better on the illumination front. Full disclosure, I do have lumen on for these recordings, so things are bright, but even with lumen off they definitely help out a bit more, and they just look a lot nicer. Build wise, this is my first time in Dune Awakening converting something from real life to an in-game structure. It's something I'm quite well versed in for Conan Exiles, but of course Dune is a bit of a different kettle of fish. It certainly doesn't translate perfectly, and in fact I think the level of details on the various pieces here actually make it a little too visually noisy, but I'm overall quite happy with it. The only thing I think the build is practically missing for use is a hangar. You can land an ornithopter on top of the garage, but it's not perfect, and you'll still have to put it in your vehicle tool if a sandstorm comes. You could add a box hangar or convert the garage into a hangar with a topside pentashield, but I'll be honest, I think it loses a lot of the castle aesthetic if you end up doing that. Nevertheless, that is often the case for building with aesthetics first. The one thing I do think this castle is also really missing is flags and big banners. A huge Atreides eagle I think would have wrapped this all together quite nicely and suited thematically, but overall, again, I'm quite happy with this. If you do like the design, I'll have some Solido replicators up for sale on the Hagal World Clusters exchange when you're watching this too. Anyway, that will about wrap us up for today. Thank you for watching, let me know what you think of this build, and if you have any requests or suggestions for future builds, please do drop them in the comments. A massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Do check out the Patreon page through the link in the description. There's early access to videos, wallpapers, video credits and much more, and joining us helps the channel out massively. Take care, and I'll see you soon.